Oh, let me just do not disturb.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, no one disturb me, just
I
ever.
know. I know.
Really, just ever. Is that wallpaper behind you?
Yes, it is.
I am
You
in
know,
love.
my office was totally renovated, and then, as you can see, we are renovating downstairs, so my closet has taken over.
It's multi-use now. You have all the best things though. You have lighting, books, horses jumping on the wall, and clothes all in one place. I feel like it doesn't get much better than that. Do you ever leave the office? I would never leave the office.
I mean, my husband has an office at home, but he also has an office outside, so he
Okay.
likes to leave the house. I'm too lazy. I just work in my pajamas. So, like, I just roll from the bedroom into the office.
Exactly. In your chair, just roll
My-
yourself. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
When I buy a new office chair, I don't focus so much on the comfort of the chair as I do the durability of the wheels.
Oh, there you go. There
I
you go.
like how expediently can you wheel me to the refrigerator
Oh, perfect.
when I need a snack.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jordan, I feel like we're meant to know each other. Now, you and
Oh
I, and Jordan and I. Jordan is I love her.
my God, Jordan's
Um,
the best. She's
she is absolutely the best. And she said, you have to talk to Melissa. And the funniest thing
Aw.
was about maybe a day later, I was stretching because when I'm not rolling myself to the refrigerator, I'm stretching. That's my version of working out, Melissa, is stretching.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. So I was stretching and I look over and I see there is your name on Rise. It's one of the descendants. Rise of the Isle of the Lost is sitting right there. Did I get that
Aw.
title right? Because there's
Yeah.
four of them. So okay. And I thought I recognize the book, but it wasn't for me. It was for my youngest daughter, who's now 17, and she had obsessed with
Aw.
the descendants. And then I actually learned yesterday that my ex-husband, who I don't he's my partner in parenting as I call him because we're good friends, but he was obsessed with descendants and I thought, "Oh, there she is." And then just a few days after that, I logged in and I got my Amazon email for the first reads. There was When Stars Align.
Oh, yay.
Jordan said you've written 9 million books and I don't think she wasn't far off. What are we at now?
So I believe Stars Align might be my 77th book because I know my 80th book is coming out this September. So, and it might be my 79th. I always wonder if I'm missing something. We are in May. I believe it might be 79 and then September is the 80th. So
Like it would be fair if what do you even do when people say if they aren't familiar with you and they say, "So what have you written?"
I usually say, I write for kids because that's kind of the bulk of what I'm known for. And I write for Disney is usually, an easy thing. And Descendants, although at first when you say Descendants, they were like, oh, the George Clooney movie. So now I say
Right.
Disney's Descendants. So,
Disney's Descendants. Two very different vibes there. Two
yes.
very different. Yeah. So when I was thinking about this morning, because I thought, oh my gosh, I could ask so many questions. Having been doing this for so long and having written so many books, what if someone were at the very beginning of their career and just feeling terrified and confused and not knowing like what would you say?
I would say, what is your goal?
Mm,
Like, do you want to get published? Do you want to, is it something where you want to make your art and you want it to be recognized, but you don't necessarily want, or you don't want to compromise, so you don't need to live on it. Like, do you want books to be your main source of income? I guess I would say. So if you want books to be your main source of income, I would say keep your day job for as long as you can until, the writing pays you enough that you can live on it. And I would also say be very frugal. I decided I wanted to be a full-time writer and that I could live on much, much less. So I was actually a computer consultant for Morgan Stanley. I was a computer programmer for 10 years. And at one point, I actually don't think I actually quit my job. I think I got laid off during the recession of 2000 when print magazines were dying and everything was being laid off. I actually jumped from computers to Allure. So I was at Condé Nast for about a year, and then I actually went back to computers when I was going to get a job at Mademoiselle, but then they closed the magazine. So I was like, okay, I'll just go back to my day job. And then Morgan Stanley did a round of layoffs, but by then I'd sold my first novel. And I said, you know what? I can live on this. You know, my husband and I were both artists. He was an architect. And I said, let's just do what we want to do and not care about money. And, so you have to care about money a little bit.
Sure.
But it was enough for us to live and to pursue our dreams. And I think that, that is what I will tell people. Either you have a patron, I think I saw an interview with Bret Easton Ellis and they said, what's your advice for writers? And he said, marry rich. It's hilarious. He's one of my idols. So I would say finances is certainly something, but I think it's kind of like, where are they in their career? Are they, have they published some things, online? Have they been getting paid to write? I would say start off small, try to build a following. I think Substack is a great way. There's just so many ways now that you can publish yourself and get yourself out there. I only sadly know the traditional route. I don't really know how writers make money outside of that. So to me, the goal has always been, a book contract with one of the big traditional publishers. So.
But even that, when you first got started, you said you learned or decided to live frugally, but was it less than what you thought? Because what I hear oftentimes, and I don't come from the traditional world, I come from the self-publishing world, but when a lot of my friends who are traditionally published will say, yeah, I got a mid to high five figures, or even a low six-figure deal, but it was paid out over 4 years, minus 15% to my agent, minus taxes. And then all of a sudden, that wasn't really that much.
Yeah, it really isn't. I was a magazine writer for a long time, so I supplemented my income that way. And then when I decided that I actually did want to, just focus on books, and the reason I've published 80 books this year is because it is the main source of my income. So you actually have to hustle, and that is what you have to do if you're going to be a full-time writer, is that you're constantly hustling. And I just had lunch with, 3 friends, and we all kind of started. I think me and Sarah Malinowski probably started, the oldest, like we both started in the 90s, and, these other writers probably started in the 2000s or the 2010s, but we've all been in the game for 15 years or more. And it is just a continuous hustle.
I don't love that you're saying that, but I love that you're saying that. I think the idea is, once I get X number of books or et cetera under my belt, it's like I'm in the machine and it just works for me. Do you find that you still are out having to do as much publicity as either you ever did or more than you would have thought 80 books in?
It goes up and down. You have a big hit, you can kind of coast, which is kind of nice, and I've had several hits in my career. So those years are like, you can kind of exhale, and then it goes away. And I always tell writers, especially people who come out of the gate with these big deals and this big publicity and these big sales, and it kind of goes through their head. I'm like, at some point they stop selling, and they always do. Especially if you're in the children's book world and the YA world, because turnover is so quick. And God bless, people like Gordon Corman, who's been publishing since he was 12, and he's still publishing, and he's hustling out there, and but I think that's the exception and not the rule. I think people do think the machine works for them, but that's not true. You will have to work for the machine. There is no rest, really. There is no rest for the weary.
Does it feel at this point like it's, and I use this word, there's so many air quotes, but easy to get the next deal? Or do you feel as though every time you're kind of starting over? I have a new concept. When I was talking to Jordan about TV, and she said, it really doesn't matter how many things you've done. You've got a new concept, and now you've got to sell that concept. And if it's not right, or wrong place, wrong time, wrong people, wrong everything, it just isn't going to go. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not a great concept. Do you feel that way every time you have a new concept to present?
you're only as good as your last hit. So if your book was a hit, everybody wants to take your meeting. Everybody's excited to see you. You know, I didn't understand that, especially in Hollywood, when I first had my big hit. And, you know, I was offered to show in Nickelodeon, which I turned down because my daughter was just born. And I was like, I don't really want to go to Vancouver, thinking, oh my God, you know, this happens all the time. I'll get another show.
Okay.
And it really does not happen like that at all. You know, strike when the iron is hot, and when you're on top of the world and everybody wants to take your meeting and buy your book, you know, it's the time to sell. Other than that, they're going to bring up all those sales figures and they will show you, you know, how much you have cost them. And so it is a dance, it's a game, but I would say the easier you are to work with, the more dependable you are. I mean, all these kind of boring things at any job, you know, showing up for when, you know, I've gone to festivals and I've been there with my publicist, and she had another author she was publicizing, and the author just said she couldn't make it, didn't get on her plane. I don't know, had some kind of, and the publicist said, here I am at 500 books. This is so unprofessional. And I said, yeah. And I've seen that. I've seen authors just flake out on a lot of things. And I think maybe they think that because either it's like your part-time job or it's a job that you do on the weekends, because promotions are usually on the weekends for book festivals, that it's not taken seriously, but it actually is. You know, people come out, they have sent your book there, your publicist is there. So, you know, I think that, you know, being very dependable and being very easy to work with has kept me in this career when let's say there's like a little bit of a fallow period between hits, but you always need a hit if you want to stay in the game. 100%.
Well, and it sounds like to stay humble too.
Yeah, that definitely helps. I mean, it doesn't hurt to be humble. It doesn't hurt to know everybody's name. It doesn't hurt to remember that this is a job. They don't work for you. They work for the company. I think that, but I think it does go to your head. I mean, certainly the first time I had a huge hit, my head was humongous.
Really? Which one was that? What was the first?
When Blue Bloods during the vampire, you know, the vampire years, when Twilight was big and Blue Bloods was big. And I just remember being so haughty. And my husband said, yeah, you were kind of terrible. You were just awful. And I thought we were going to have this huge TV show. It's so funny because we were not in competition. They do a lot of parallel development, which I did not know. I didn't know that Warner Brothers was actually developing two vampire shows at the same time. One was Blue Bloods and one was The Vampire Diaries.
I was just going to say, was it The Vampire Diaries?
And they chose The Vampire Diaries because Kevin Williamson was the showrunner. And I always say, if Kevin Williamson was our showrunner, Blue Bloods would be on TV, and whoever wrote The Vampire Diaries would be right here, right now. That show is dead to me. That was my time.
We will not talk about that. We will not mention.
But, you know, it's all good. You can't let it get to your head, and you can't define yourself by your career. Like, that way is madness.
Do you, the YA in the children's space is notoriously challenging for what do you think are the biggest reasons for that, besides what you've already said, which is high turnover? And is there anything else that makes that?
It actually was not. YA, when I started, was a lot more dependable, and adult, so much more cutthroat. I think what's happened is that YA is now like adult. So when I started in YA in 2002, it was one bookshelf at the bookstore. And so there were very few books that were being published. So when you published your YA or children's book, it would stay on the shelves for a very long time. And, you know, it just gave you a lot more, you know, you just got more chances for it to find an audience. Whereas when I published my adult book, my first book was actually for adults. You got 2 weeks on that shelf, and if it did not move, you were out, you know. And YA now being such a huge genre, also being read by adults, it is now just like the adult market, which is, you know, a lot more cutthroat. For sure.
Was there a turning point with that, do you think? Like, was Harry Potter perhaps?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, Harry Potter is the reason we all have jobs, you know, all get those advances. I mean, whatever has happened with J.K. Rowling, you have to acknowledge that she created this genre, this space, this kind of respect, you know, financially and in the readers, for sure.
Well, I just don't, from what I can remember, no one expected Harry Potter to be beloved by 90-year-olds as well as 9-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, it was rejected by like 30 publishers.
Right.
I mean, that's why it's like nobody really knows what makes a hit. It's the same thing in books as it is in movies and TV shows. Everybody works really hard and either it hits or it doesn't. You just kind of get lucky.
Did you ever have, or do you ever have what I call a should book where someone says, okay, Melissa, you should do this because if you just did this, it would go really, really well, and tried to move you, you're shaking your head, but no.
I would say that I've done everything. I don't have a book that's not written.
Never say never, because Jordan and I can come up with something that is just wild. Yeah, it's just curious to me when people have that kind of success. It's a business, right? So if someone, you strike me as a pretty strong personality and in the sense that you know what you want to do and that's what you want to do. So how do you keep coming up with concepts? Are you you're obviously incredibly imaginative, but how do you come up with the next concept?
I like novelty and I like trends and I like what people are into. I think I like bestsellers. I think a lot of artists see themselves as kind of outsiders or, and I always say that if you want to write, I always wanted to write commercial fiction because I love commercial fiction. But I love literary fiction too. I mean, without a doubt.
What's the difference for you? How do you define it?
I mean, I guess literary fiction is a genre now in like the contemporary. But like I grew up loving, my favorite book is War and Peace. That is my absolute favorite book of all time.
I can't.
I'm like very much inspired by, the characters in it, the romance in it. It got me out of a huge depression, but I also grew up loving, Stephen King. He was like my favorite author growing up. I mean, who's more commercial than Stephen King, So I think I'm just interested in a lot of things and I'm interested in what people are interested in. And I think when you're open to that, and also I'm kind of allowed because I'm in YA to be able to write several different genres. I've written thrillers, I've written supernatural, I've written fantasy, portal fantasy, second world fantasy, I've written children's books. So I think being in children's allowed me to do a lot of different genres. And so when I do that in adult, it's not like, oh, you've never done that. I was like, well, I did that in YA. Why can't I do it for adults?
You said War and Peace got you out of a depression?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was like,
I read War and Peace at one point just to say I had read it. And I was like, okay, I think I need to read it again because there was war and then there was peace and then there was war, like the most aptly titled book probably in history. How on earth did that book get you out of a depression?
It was just full. What I loved about it was how he talked about families and how he talked about the love between siblings, like really, Katerina and her brother Nikolai, like that relationship in that book is so wonderful. And even like how wise it was about, kind of about people in the world. My favorite character is Katya, and something about her, it's like to whom much is given, more is given, because she was so privileged and she was so beloved. And so she was so loving. Whereas, contrast that with Sonia, who was always kind of like, oh, the poor girl, the poor relative, and we were supposed to feel bad for her. It kind of turned that on its head, like, because Sonia always felt lesser than she was lesser in her own mind also. And Nikolai doesn't end up with her. Spoiler, he ends up with yeah. And Katerina said something about that. She always thought less. And so I just wanted that abundance. I think it is also that like kind of thinking of abundantly. So I actually named my daughter is named Matea Catherine after Katerina. So
no kidding. So one of my favorite books is Anna Karenina, and I'm starting to think right. So it's three favorites. And that's one of them. And my grandfather, who passed away, gosh, I want to say about 15 years ago, had a leather-bound edition of Anna Karenina, and it just sits. I'm almost afraid to open it because it's beloved to me, but I want to read it again from there. And now you've got me thinking about whether or not there are sort of subconscious reasons why I loved that book that I don't realize. Have you read The Covenant of Water, Abraham Verghese? So it's newer. I mean, it's in the last couple of years, but it's when I think literary fiction, for some reason, that's the book that first pops into my mind. And I have to read literary fiction very slowly.
Yeah.
Do you read things in a different way? Do you immerse yourself in it, different genres in different ways?
I think that it has to be something that keeps me turning the pages. So
Okay.
boring, I put it down. Certainly some literary fiction is very compelling and easy to read and fun to get into it. I've not read that book. If it looks too boring, I'm not going to read it. But
Okay. Okay.
Trying to
And
think.
yet in War and Peace, because I think that's the funny thing about that is I think so many people would say, I was so bored.
Yeah, no, it's not boring at all. Well, some of the war stuff is boring. I mean, you could just skip it.
Agree. And I had to keep going back to that damn map. I was like, where are we? Like, thank God there's an index of characters and a map at the beginning. Like now we have to have maps in books that have world building, but I legit needed the map.
Yeah.
And the map of characters. Like who is whom? I cannot. I just
need to keep track of Andre, Katya, Pierre, and Nikolai.
Well, I took a Russian lit class, which was strange in college. And it was one of my favorite classes. It was strange because who signs up for a Russian lit class? But I did. And I can still see my professor. I mean, we won't talk about how many years ago it was, but I can't remember her name, but I can see her. And it was the most fascinating class because she was so passionate about Russian literature and about Russian authors. It was just incredibly. What's your favorite thing to read? Do you have one?
Cooking memoirs. Love cooking.
Stop it.
Because I kind of cook. My daughter kind of like shamed me into cooking, and she wanted home cooked meals instead of Postmates. I think one of the Kardashians showed her Postmates bill and think ours was higher. So it was like, oh my God, So, but I love the fantasy of cooking, and I love about Ruth Reichel or MFK Fisher or, any cooking memoir I will read. Restaurant memoirs, wine memoirs, anything with food, people making them and all the drama behind it. It's definitely even the recipes, so great. So great to think I'll do it one day. I never do.
Okay, well, I feel I'm like a big old Pinterest fail waiting to happen with every recipe on the planet because I see it and I think, okay, let's go. And
let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I just I'm not terribly good at it, as all of my children will attest to that fact. I'm also I don't love it.
I find it relaxing, but I don't like the prep for it because you actually have to go to the grocery store and then you have to cut it all up and then you actually have to cook it. I told my daughter, I was like, oh, I'm going to have a dinner party and maybe I'll cook because I've been cooking for the family. And my daughter was like horrified. She was like, you can cook for me and daddy, but not for other people, Mom. Why would you subject them to your cooking? I was like, okay, I guess I'm not.
I guess we won't do that. It makes me question like the sous chef, the guy or gal who's in there just chopping everything. If I've cut one carrot, I'm done. That's exactly enough, right? I don't. And when they say cut the carrot like matchsticks,
oh yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
I'm out. Now, if you bring it to me and it's already cut like matchsticks, I could get into it.
Yeah.
But is there a favorite cooking memoir that you read and you just thought?
I loved Giuliano Malucci's. I Lost, I Made Spaghetti because it's kind of like a Sex in the City dating memoir, but also about her mom. And actually the recipes are actually really easy. It's like Italian recipes. So yeah, I Lost, I Made Spaghetti, one of my favorites. And the recipes are great. I've made the meatballs. I actually was able to make them and it actually turned out well. I think I made them twice in my life. Yeah, but anything Ruth Reichel writes, Comfort Me with Apples is amazing. I've heard
of. I think clearly I stay away from the recipe section of the bookstore. Like that is not for me, I guess. Maybe I don't know. Do you think I'd get more into it if I read the backstory? Do you like watching it on TV?
Yes, I also like watching it. For sure. Yes. I love the Food Channel. I love any kind of cooking show. I love Is It Cake? Where, on Netflix, where the host cuts it, is it cake? And my husband and I are like, it's cake or it's not cake.
It's very clear that the cakes I bake are in fact cake and shouldn't be.
Yes.
That's kind of how there's a new one I just saw. I can't remember what streaming service it's on, but it's like a documentary of
Hmm.
4 different, and one of them is Alice Waters. Is it Alice? Am I saying that right? Because I feel like,
Yeah.
is she a chef? Okay. I feel like isn't there an author named Alice?
I think there is an author also, but
No.
Shape and Else Waters.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
salad, the fancy. We went to Chez Panisse. When did we go? Just recently, actually. It was cool.
Well, the way she talks about salad, and then I go and I make my salad, and it's because Alice needs to make my salad.
I think Alice needs to make all of ours.
You know, all of our salads. I feel like I would eat so much better if
Yeah.
someone like that. Okay, I digress. So, what keeps you? Is it your love of writing that keeps you in the space and keeps you producing more and more? Like, what keeps you here?
Yeah, even though, it's so funny, you always have to remember that you're living your dream, right? And seeing my author friends, we were all like, why the F do we do this? It's so hard. It's so stressful. I mean, and then the hustle and grind of it all. And then you realize when you're writing a story, it is really fun. And what would I do? I mean, I just entertain myself. I like being alone. I like making up things. I like figuring out puzzles, because a book is like a logic puzzle. And if you have no story coherence, nobody understands it. And then if you do it right, people take it for granted, but it's actually one of the hardest things to do. So I think I like the mental challenge of it. And then I like, just being left alone with my imagination. So yeah, I actually do like that. And I think I didn't realize that being an author means also being promoting and traveling and I love talking to readers. I love meeting my readers. That is really, really fun and actually makes me feel better about what I'm doing because you remember that there's actually people reading it. I think, book tours are really exhausting, so I don't look forward to them. So it's kind of like I just kind of get through them and then come home and be like, thank God. But yeah, and also I have my mortgage and, send the kid to college and,
Yeah.
it was a job. So there's that.
What a great point that when you read a great book, it's easy to think, how hard can this be?
Oh yeah.
Right. Without recognizing that that person 9,000 drafts later, that's where they ended up.
Yeah.
What's your process do you write it quickly and then have people review it, beta readers, what's your process now? How has that evolved?
So my husband and I work together, my name is on them, but we actually work on the books. Pretty collaborative. I mean, it's like 50-50. So we usually come up with the concepts together. Sometimes it's his concept, sometimes it's mine. He's also published 7 books under his own name. We've published 3 under both of our names, and then the majority is under my name, but we work on all of them together. So we kind of talk it out, and then I'll write the first kind of proposal that we sell, and then usually he and I write the outline together. Sometimes he writes the whole outline, sometimes I write the whole outline, and then we just kind of trade it back and forth. He's usually a great idea generator, and I'm usually the one who says whether the marketplace will buy it. I'll be like, oh, I can use that and I think I can sell it here. And then I'm usually the end. I'm like the polisher and the one who kind of takes it into production. So yeah, so that's how we work. And it's kind of it's easy and difficult because we're business partners, writing partners, and we're married and we're parents. So sometimes it's like too much. We have a lot of time together.
Right. So I'm hearing plotter. Are you more of a plot? You guys are plotting or you're plotting
Absolutely.
before you're writing.
Yeah.
Do you write every day?
Not every day.
Okay.
Tuesdays are my Zoom days.
Okay.
I write every day if the deadline is there. So if the deadline is about 2 weeks out, that's kind of when I start canceling all my plans. I start just staying at home. It is the writing cave. We got to get that book into production. And that's when, those really long writing hours are. Sometimes that's actually when the book really happens. I think Maggie Stiefvater has talked about that. She's like, you can write, but like that last, 2 weeks, that last month is really kind of when the book comes alive. And it's really exciting because you've kind of figured it out, and then you're just right. You're not even counting words anymore because you actually know the story. So you're just trying to get it down.
Yeah. Are you someone who can you do 15-minute increments or do you need 4 hours? Does it vary?
I usually work from like 8 a.m. to about 1 p.m.
Okay.
Creatively, which means like I try not to answer emails. I try not to answer the phone. I try not to do any non-writing work. So I just have that block of time to really focus. So I think that, is really getting into the flow and kind of the deep work of it. And then, after lunch, is when I answer emails and do all the admin and kind of work on like kind of domestic what's for dinner and all that.
And who's going to put the carrots into matchsticks? Like, how's that going to go? Yeah, not me. Do you spend a lot of time on social media?
Not really. I mean, yes and no. I always tell authors like to do it if it's fun. So I'll do it if it's fun, and like, oh, I look cute there, or like, oh, this is a cute photo of my friends, and we'll post this. We should promote the book. I don't know. Maybe as a Gen Xer, that whole like blasting you, sounding your own trumpet is just really hard. But I actually think you actually do have to do it. So I'm trying to do a lot more now. I used to have a lot more assistants before COVID. So I had, and I still have a social media assistant, but I had somebody who would come here and kind of help me with the admin and help run all the fan letters and all that. And now it's just me. And so it's kind of random. So I always say, this newsletter you'll get randomly when I remember to send it out.
When I have something to say, I'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Last question I always ask is, what are you reading now, or what have you read recently besides War and Peace that you really loved?
Oh, that I really loved. I really loved Legends and Lattes by Travis. I can't remember his last name. I can look it up, but Legends and Lattes, which is a cozy fantasy about female orc who retires and opens a coffee shop. And it is so fun. I'm a fantasy junkie. I love Lord of the Rings. So it's basically, kind of in that world of like orcs and wizards and all that. But it's really just about opening a coffee shop. And it's so great. I loved it.
You've now said it twice, so you confirmed it. But I was like, did she just say orc? An orc opened a coffee shop?
Yeah.
Like, you can write anything. This is.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love anything about a coffee shop. So anything else? Any other books that
What else have I read lately? I've been reading a lot of romance. So I have a big adult romantasy, which is coming out in September called Rings of Fate. And it's my first adult romantasy. It's Lord of the Rings with sex. So check it out.
So I've never been into really Lord of the Rings, but if you add in the set, like, let's go.
It's my publisher is calling it The Princess Bride meets A Wheel of Time. So it's kind of a bantering couple. So, and I was reading a lot of romance anyway. I was reading a lot of Bridgerton. So the Bridgerton series is amazing. It's so fun. It is so much fun to read. It is just reading pleasure. I haven't really read anything that I would love. I read things that I was like kind of meh about, so I'm not going to talk about those books.
Right, sure. We can keep that on the down low. What did you say your publisher, Princess Bride meets what?
A Wheel of Time, which is like a Lord of the Rings. I guess they didn't want to use Lord of the Rings, so it's Princess Bride meets Wheel of Time.
Okay. And is it a series or is it a standalone?
Yes, it is a series.
It is a series. Oh, I'm excited. I never thought I'd say I'm excited for something that.
It's about a snarky barmaid who, doesn't think she'll ever fall in love or was ever worthy of love, and a handsome prince with a terrible secret. And it's just so fun to watch them fall in love. It was so fun to write. So
can't wait. Well, thank you so much for creating the time and you've inspired me. I feel like I want to go wallpaper something.
Oh, yes. This is I think it's actually zebras.
Oh, I can see it now. Okay.
Yes, it's the Maasai wallpaper from Scalabandra.
Okay, I will look. Oh my gosh.
The Royal Tenenbaums, I think, had like the red zebras. So it comes in red, green.
Oh.
I went with the gold, so it's a black and gold office.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. Like I'm really feeling inspired.
Thank you so much. I wish we had renovated downstairs so my closet could be out of here.
Well, in time. In time. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
It was so much fun.